Her new style of portraiture swiftly won over an influential clientele, and none more useful than the Duke of Alba, who would offer her a golden opportunity, an introduction to the Spanish court. So in 1559, Anguissola, aged 27, left her home and sisters behind to come to Spain as a guest at the state wedding of King Philip II to Isabel de Valois. Here in the Palacio del Infantado, she faced the biggest test of her mettle.
The wedding was the culmination of delicate peace negotiations between Spain and France. Imagine the tension. It would daunt even the most experienced courtier. But Sofonisba Anguissola had more than enough poise to meet the challenge. That evening, there was a torch dance whereby a man passes the torch to the woman he'd like to dance with, and then the woman has the power to invite a man to dance. And then with unimaginable self-command, Sofonisba passed the torch to Philip II, the king. With the eyes of the court upon her, she took to the floor, and he danced with her. She was a palpable hit.
Sheer finesse secured Anguissola's entree to court. But as a woman, she could not be officially recognised as a court painter on the same terms as men. Her title was Lady in Waiting. And there was a price to pay for her art, too. In the 16th century, state portraits were vital diplomatic tools amongst the courts of Europe. They were less about art and more about politics. Would Anguissola's playfulness serve the art of statecraft?
This is a highly, highly formal portrait of Isabel de Valois. It subscribes to all the stringent rules of Spanish court portraiture. The great stiffness of pose. She's not just a woman. She is a queen, and queen of the richest nation on earth. There's a part of me that can't help but regret the transition from the intimacy, informality, mischief and laughter of her earlier paintings back in Italy. But that's really to miss the point, because what a portrait like this shows is Anguissola's capacity to live by the stringent rules of court portraiture. Sofonisba Anguissola has proved that she can play the game.
Anguissola never put a graceful foot wrong. She enriched her family and pulled off 2 advantageous marriages. Even in advanced old age, her reputation was still undimmed.
Not only did she impress and surprise Michelangelo in her youth, in her 90s, she won the homage of Van Dyck.
In 1624, Van Dyck, aged just 25, himself a celebrated artist in the courts of Europe, made a special pilgrimage to Anguissola's home. And here at the British Museum, his notes and sketchbooks survive.
And here is a charming, vivacious, quick sketch of an old lady. Portrait of Sofonisba the painter, done from life in Palermo in July 1624. Her age then 96. Still with her memory and her senses prontissimo, so speedy, quick. She's still got all her faculties. How can it be that Michelangelo and Van Dyck found Sofonisba so compelling as an artist, and yet her reputation is almost unknown today? I think the answer must lie in the court context. The court made her art possible, nurtured her, sheltered her.
that it guaranteed that her art would never be bought and sold on the open marketplace, and ensured that her art remained an acquired taste of the privileged few.
So could a woman in the Renaissance ever become an independent professional artist? Heading her own workshop, earning her own money and battling it out with men for commissions. There was one place in Italy where it was possible, Bologna, home to the first university in the world, a city with more liberal attitudes to female learning and greater legal freedoms.
Lavinia Fontana wasn't born to the Bolognese nobility. She was the daughter of a struggling artist. But that is key. She had access to oils, to pigments, to the brushes, to the canvases. But above all, she had an entree into the mysteries of artistic production. She had training.
Commercial art in the 16th century was in the grip of powerful guilds who governed access to that essential training, barring women. Family provided the only alternative for them. But in a corner of a storeroom, I've discovered proof that Fontana realised her true value.
This is a self-portrait of Lavinia Fontana. It's exquisite. But this is not just your ordinary representation of female virtue. It's actually a very canny piece of marketing. She sent this painting to her putative father-in-law. In the background, there's a cassone, which is an Italian marriage chest, which symbolises dowry. But the Fontanas had very little in the way of dowry to offer. Next to the cassone, however, spot-lit, there's an easel, a direct reference to Lavinia Fontana's professional skill. What she's saying there is, my marriage chest might be empty, but I am rich in talent.
And when she got married in 1577 and became a mother, Fontana was determined to keep her workshop open for business, as her family manuscripts reveal.
The documents that we have here tell us so much about what it takes to become a successful female painter and at the same time a successful wife and mother. I mean, this is a woman who turned out hundreds of paintings, perhaps 200 to 300 paintings in her lifetime, and yet was pregnant 11 times.
Unthinkable.
We've got a document, in fact, that's amazing in so many ways, poignant, remarkable. It's the list that Gianpaolo, her husband, writes of the births and, sadly, so many of the deaths of their children. It's a document that also attests to the way that she rises through society, because any couple will always choose as godparents at this point in time the people they think they know that can do the most for their children.
The most good.
Exactly. So they start out with, as godparents, the Bolognese bourgeoisie. As we move on, 1587, she's got Ladomia Gozzadini as the godmother to one of her children.
And the Gozzadini are the powerful family, are they not?
They are one of the most important families in Bologna, and of course Lavinia has an incredibly close relationship with Ladomia Gozzadini.
I've come to see a painting commissioned by Ladomia Gozzadini herself, a work which attests to Fontana's intimate understanding of her female clients, the ladies of the Bolognese nobility.
On the face of it, it looks to be a simple celebration of the wealth and dignity of a prominent noble family. But look behind the surface wealth, and in fact, there are all sorts of secret messages just waiting to be decoded, which are the surviving record of a torrid and toxic family drama.
Fontana begins the tale with this man, Gozzadini, the father. He promised to leave his entire fortune to whichever daughter gave him a male heir first, setting off a cruel fertility race. And it was not Vladimir, but Ginevra who would be the victor.
And you can see this by the fact that her father is touching her hand. But Laodomia has her revenge. Look at Ginevra, look at her face. She is palpably and demonstrably ugly. Her husband blamed Laodomia herself for his inability to get his hands on the great fortune. Laodomia will have none of it. If you look at Ginevra's medallion, on it you can just about see the figure of a man with a proud, rampant, erect penis. Whereas on Laodomia, there's another naked man, but his penis is flaccid. She is saying, the fault is not mine, fella, the fault is yours. Her version of the story is here for all time. She will not be marginalized in her family or in art. This is the world that women made.
Fontana owed her career to the women who commissioned her works, securing her position as the first professional female artist of the age. But for me, her paintings are so powerful because they provide a precious window upon the lives of daughters, brides, wives, and widows. Yet perhaps it is this very family focus that has enabled her work to be overlooked in history. In the hierarchy of art, such intimate family portraits were not as highly valued as historical and biblical epics. For a female artist to secure her place in history, she would need to live and paint on a far grander scale. Rome. At the turn of the 17th century, the city of Caravaggio, a place of light and dark, the sacred and profane. The home of Artemisia Gentileschi. Born in 1593, Gentileschi, like Fontana, was the daughter of an artist. From the outset, she tackled the epic. Her first subject, at the age of 17, was a favourite of male artists, Susanna and the Elders, typically presented by men as a beautiful naked woman, luxuriating in the attention of older men.
In fact, the biblical story is very ugly. Those elders want Susanna to sleep with them, and when she says she won't, they say they'll betray her to her husband as an adulterer, and she will be executed. In her depiction, Susanna doesn't enjoy anything about these men. They're dirty old men leering over the wall at her, trying to touch her, and she is writhing away in horror. At the tender age of 17, Artemisia Gentileschi is trying to give expression to something which doesn't even have a name: the violence of the male gaze.
This stark judgment upon men was to prove depressingly accurate. Just 2 years later, Gentileschi's father brought charges against the painter Agostino Tassi for his daughter's rape. Tassi was her teacher and had exploited her.
The subsequent 7-month trial dragged Gentileschi's reputation through the mud. Tassi counterclaimed. Artemisia was no virgin, an easy lay. So how could it be rape?
But Gentileschi refused to withdraw her testimony. In fact, she offered to submit to the thumbscrews to prove her version of events.
Think about it. She's an artist. What a risk. She needed those hands. This demonstrates her dauntless courage, but also the fierceness of her commitment to her own truth about women and men.
The shadow of this trauma has coloured the way Gentileschi's work has been viewed, as a shriek of rage and revenge against male oppression. But that's not what strikes me. I see female strength in adversity and the triumph of art over ordeal.
This, for me, is one of the most stirring paintings in the pantheon of female art. It's Judith and her maidservant. They just committed a political assassination, creeping into the tents of the Assyrian enemy, where they have decapitated the general Holofernes. There is his head in the bundle. This was painted probably about a year after Gentileschi's trial, when she was still around 20. But actually, I don't read female violence against men or revenge against patriarchy in this painting. Just look at those women. They're shoulder to shoulder. Their bodies echo each other. For me, this painting is all about female unity of purpose and bravery. It says, in the strongest way possible, men don't have the monopoly of courage.
As Gentileschi proved when she left Rome behind and headed to Florence, determined to reinvent herself. Here, among the tens of thousands of volumes of city records, there are legal papers that have just been unearthed, which illuminate exactly how she went about it.
These are books that are records of some of the debts she accrued. In this case, she's purchased something from a very, very prestigious silk merchant who could become a potential patron. If she hasn't paid off her debt in time, perhaps she can offer him a painting. She first is seeking out minor patrons, these patrons of music in the circle of the Medici. Ultimately, though, we know that she's casting her line, looking for the big fish.
And does she land her big carp?
Oh, she succeeded at the highest level. She obtained her ultimate goal, which was the patronage of the Medici Grand Duke himself.
What I adore about your archival finds is that I think they absolutely refute the popular impression of Artemisia as a victim.
We don't see a victim of male violence here. What we see is a woman who is capable of doing business with men, doing business like a man, and yet she never ceases to be a woman.
As you might say in Italian, she's a tremenda.
Gentileschi refused to be defined by her gender. As she promised one sceptical patron, "You will find the spirit of Caesar in this soul of a woman." She strode into the male arena, tackling historical epics and ambitious public works all over Italy and beyond. Her reputation reaching even Charles I in faraway England. In 1638, Gentileschi came to join her father, who had been painting at the English court for 12 years, on the grand public works that secured a male artist's reputation. Now, Gentileschi came to the rescue of her aging father on his most prestigious royal commission, found here today at Marlborough House in London, the crowning glory of the main salon.
And this is it. An allegory of peace and the arts under the English crown.
She was more than a match for her male contemporaries. The epic theme and commanding scale epitomise Artemisia Gentileschi's supreme belief in her own proficiency and power.
The woman who had found herself a man's plaything, tortured and dishonoured while still in her teens, had forged an international career. And this in an era when most Italian women barely left the house. What a feat, armed only with her fearlessness and her talent.